And now back to more of Insight on Disability on Talk Radio 680 WCBM.
Welcome back to Insight on Disability. For all of your social media followers, visit Facebook and join the Insight on Disability group. It's our newest way of keeping everyone posted on the latest happenings here at IOD. Just click on the Join Group button and Mike will very happily add you to the group. And you can also follow us on Twitter at Insight_radio. Mike?
Yeah, thanks. That is one of those things that we were talking about earlier. So you can just join the Facebook group now, and that should take care of everything while we're dealing with this other issue. But on the phone with us right now is Peter Little, who is the Executive Director of the Parking Authority of Baltimore City. And Peter, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great, Michael. How are you?
Yeah, it's good to hear from you. I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, it's been a little bit.
But you got some good news. You got a brand new project going on here, or a brand new phase of Project Space that took place. It started on April 17th, right?
Yep, April 17th, we expanded Project Space to Federal Hill.
All right, yeah, that's and I've got some questions about that. But first, let's just recap and remind people exactly what the whole Project Space is all about.
Sure. So Project Space is a project that was a joint project between the Mayor's Commission on Disabilities and the Parking Authority to reserve about 10% of the on-street metered parking spaces for people with disabilities. And at those spaces, we installed highly accessible single-space parking meters. And then we made sure that the rest of the parking meters in each one of those phases met all the most current ADA requirements. And at that point in each of these phases, everyone is paying for parking, people with disabilities and people without disabilities as well. And so we started phase one, started 3 years ago in the Central Business District. And this past spring, phase two launched in Harbor East and in Fells Point. And then, this past fall of last year, I'm sorry, this spring, Federal Hill, April the 17th.
Yeah, it seems, I can't believe it's been so long ago that this project started. It seems like it was just yesterday when we were down there over in, what was it, Key Highway. And
yep, that's right.
And the former mayor was getting everything started. It seems like it was, it had just happened.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, 3 years passes by pretty quickly, but yeah, we've made some advances and it's starting to accelerate now. So this coming fall, we'll be moving to Mount Vernon, and then next year it'll come to the rest of the city in 2018.
And when is it coming to Mount Vernon?
Yeah, in fall of this year.
Oh, yeah, you are.
Exact launch date, but it will be fall.
Yeah. Okay. Now, how successful have things been so far? And I know one of the big concerns was, there was a lot of theft of the handicap placards, and just exactly, how have things gone so far through the first two phases?
It's really had a very positive effect on the theft and then the abuse of disability placards. Before Project Space started 3 years ago, more than 23 disability placards were being stolen every month from Baltimore City residents. And they were then being sold, obviously, on the black market to folks who wanted to abuse them in order to get the free parking from them. Since then, that number has dropped to fewer than 3 per month that are being stolen in the city. And obviously, that's a big. That's one of the things that we're most proud of in terms of the results of Project Space. Yeah,
that's that's a big improvement. That's one of those things. And I guess are you still seeing the thefts because there are still some spaces in the city that are open for this kind of thing?
Yep, that probably has something to do with it. And then there are probably just those folks that looking to break into cars to steal anything of value, and then if they find a placard, they take that as well too.
Yeah, because once the whole project is finished in the city, that's not going to do any good to steal those placards at all. Then.
No, other than, obviously if they want to then abuse it to park in one of those reserved spaces for people with disabilities, but you aren't going to get the free parking that you did before, and that's the primary reason why people were stealing them and then abusing them.
Right. Now, in Fed Hill, what are the barriers, or I guess, or what are the I don't know, barriers is a good word there. What are the boundaries? There you go of that you've laid out for Federal Hill.
Yeah, really, it's any of the metered spaces there in Federal Hill, and it's a fairly defined area. Most of our parking meters are on Light Street and on Charles Street, and then on Cross Street, both the north and the southbound, or the north and south Cross Street areas there, and then some of the side streets as well too. So it's a more defined area there. But any of the metered spaces in Federal Hill now are covered by project space. So we've reserved now there in Federal Hill 24 spaces for people with disabilities.
And that's
I was there yesterday, and they were being well used by people who were displaying disability placards and tags.
And the other big thing is, besides putting in the new spaces, you're retrofitting a lot of the older meters so that people with disabilities, have them so they're accessible to people with disabilities.
Yeah, that's right. So, some of those meters, when we bought them at the time, and some of them are a dozen years old now, they met the then current ADA guidelines, but the guidelines have changed. They now, all of the buttons and the coin slot and everything have to be slightly lower now per the most current guidelines, and so we retrofitted all of those older meters to meet the most current guidelines. Yeah,
that's good. And I just came across here the boundaries for Fed Hill was north was East Montgomery Street, south was Austin Street,
yep,
East Lake Street, and West Sharp Street. So that's a pretty good area.
Yep, and it covers all of those. That main area, the heart of Federal Hill, where people want to shop and where they want to dine, and so it's and obviously we want to make that accessible to people with disabilities, and with these 24 reserved spaces, it looks like it's achieving that result, making it more accessible to all those shops and restaurants.
And I tell you, parking is at a huge premium down around that area.
Sure is. Yeah, I was there last night, and it was packed. And as each of these phases come along, and I appreciate being able to come on to your show, because my main concern is that we install these spaces and they don't get utilized because people don't know about them. But it was good to see that more than half of them were being used when I stopped by yesterday, and that phase is still pretty fresh for Federal Hill, but they were being pretty well utilized.
No, that's good. And how else do you reach out to the public? Are you doing this through other sources? I mean,
Yep.
Are you doing things with the Mayor's Commission?
Yep, through the Mayor's Commission on Disabilities, we help to get the word out, but then with each phase of Project Space, we also do pay for some advertising, both online and in print. We make sure to visit each of the shops and the restaurants in each new phase so that they know, so that they can pass it along to their customers, especially if they have regular customers who they know may have disabilities or some mobility issues, to get the word out to them through all of those means.
All right, yeah, that's good. Now, this next phase you said is coming in the fall. That is really speeding some things up, and that's once Mount Vernon's done. You say that the rest of the city is just going to be done in one big push at that point?
Well, it'll be over the course of 2018. Yeah, we don't have any other concentrated areas of parking meters anywhere else in the city. I guess the next closest would be Hamden in terms of a concentration of meters. But generally it's 2 or 3 or 4 blocks of metered parking in various other commercial districts around the city. And so we'll get to those throughout the course of 2018.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've used the meters before as well. So it is really nice to have that accessibility down there. And I don't see. And you said this. You basically got this idea from some other projects that had done this around the country as well.
Yeah, there were a number of other cities that had at least tried to do something to provide accessible spaces at on-street meters for people with disabilities, and also to try to curb that theft and abuse of disability placards. So D.C. had tried something early on, Arlington County in Virginia, several other cities, and so we got together with the Mayor's Commission on Disabilities, took a look at the best of what other cities had done. So, for instance, Washington, D.C. had reserved about 10% of their parking spaces for people with disabilities, and we liked the way that they designed it, the signage, the meters that they placed there. Other cities had good public education programs that we were able to partake of. And so we kind of took from the best and then learned from the mistakes of other cities. And then, again, with the Mayor's Commission on Disabilities, actually then came up with the concept for our project.
Yeah, that's great. And one last thing, I was just looking here over my notes, that the actual time limit has actually been extended on. Is that throughout the whole city, or is it just on those particular meters?
Nope. It's throughout the city as we incorporate each one of these phases. We've been extending the duration to 4 hours at all metered parking spaces in each of those areas. And that then helps us to meet state law, which basically says that you have to offer double the duration of the parking meter, or up to 4 hours at a parking meter, in order to stay within state law. But the other thing that we found, though, is that people do want to stay a longer period of time. So, for instance, in Federal Hill, before instituting Project Space, most of the meters there were either 2-hour duration or 3-hour duration. But when you go to Federal Hill, you want to shop a little bit, you want to go to a restaurant, you don't want to be rushed,
right.
To say,
right.
I have to be out of there in 2 hours. And it's especially important, obviously, for people with disabilities, if it may take them a little longer to go to their destination and come back. So we've been pushing all meters to a minimum of 4-hour duration as we roll out Project Space across the city.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
And where can people find out more about the whole project?
Yep. Well, if they were to Google Project Space in Baltimore, they could find information about Project Space. And we have a dedicated website for Project Space, or they can go to the Parking Authority of Baltimore City's website as well too, and follow the link there.
Is the website still more space for the number 4 all?
The number 4 all, yes.
Okay.
That is the
more fun, or more fun.
More fun. Hey, if you got that parking space for 4 hours, it's more fun.
It's more space.
And it really does do that. That's the other thing that we want to do with the program, is to create more availability of metered parking spaces for everyone, because one of the chief problems with the abuse of the disability placards was that folks were using them to park for free and all day, and then there was no space for anybody to be able to park. And it's really solved that problem also. Right.
All right, listen, Peter, I'll let you go. Thanks for coming on and letting us know about this again. I'm sure we'll touch base with you again in the fall here with the Mount Vernon Phase 4 of Project Space. And once again, that's more space for the number 4 all.com if you want to find out more about Project Space. Peter, thanks a lot again for coming on, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, Peter, talk to you.